Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to a look at the three cars that we've seen today. That is the two Alphas, that's not going to get confusing, and the new Mercedes W11. We will have a proper look at that W11 a little bit later in the video, do some side-by-sides, a bit of spot the difference again, and we will wrap things up by having a look at the new one-off Alfa Romeo livery. But we're going to kick things off by looking at the brand new Alpha Tauri, a launch that I think a lot of people have been very excited about. So the car was officially launched in three parts this evening and as part of a fashion show. And I've got to say, the highlight of my night was Franz Tost talking about fashion. I don't think life gets any better than that. First impressions on that livery. I'll try and keep it clean if I can. Absolutely stunning. I think that is the best livery we have seen so far. And without putting them down straight away, I'm pretty confident Williams and Racing Point won't come up with anything better. So I'm going to call that best livery of the season. All right, I'm probably getting a little bit carried away. And perhaps there is a big chunk of recency bias in that. But again, I just think it looks absolutely stunning. Vibes of the BMW Williams as well. Such a good looking livery. And the race suits as well on the drivers look brilliant too. There is part of me that's a little bit disappointed, but only because of my own expectations. Kind of like the McLaren yesterday with the whole papaya and white thing that I was hoping for. I really would have loved this to have been black and chrome or black and white or whatever. But either way, it still looks absolutely awesome. I do want to address something before we go any further though, and that is on the pronunciation of the team name. Now, David Coulthard, who hosted the event, must have gone through at least 7 pronunciations, but he seemed to be hovering around Alpha Tauri rather than Alpha Tauri. So I guess just a heads up if I wander between different pronunciations, it's just because I'm not really confident that anybody's totally sure apart from the people at Alpha Tauri, Tauri, Rosso, whatever. Look, at the end of the day, as long as we know which team is being referred to, it doesn't really matter, does it? But, you know, just trying to clear that up as best I can and then making it as clear as mud. That's the F1 Word way. Anyway, let's have a look at the car. I've covered the livery. I'll say it once again. Absolutely love it. I'm not going to go mad on the technical side, though. I am going to do some stuff on the W11, but I will once again just pick out a few points of interest, but probably no side-by-sides with this one. Actually, do you know what? That's a lie. I will do a couple of side-by-sides. I'm not going to go mad, though. So first of all, comparing it to last year's launch spec, you can see a lot of changes on there. But I've done that because it'll also give you an idea as to just how much that car will evolve over the course of this season. Although 2021 on the horizon, maybe not as much as in previous years. So just a couple of obvious areas of change at the front of the car, if you like, or from the front view of the car. The car on the right, by the way, is a Brazil spec, so you can see there have been changes to the barge boards around the side pods. That's pretty obvious. And also to the airbox. Bit of a change of philosophy with that one. And by the way, perhaps somewhat unsurprisingly, not all that different to the RB16. Another area I just wanted to point out very quickly as well, because I did notice it pretty much straight away, or when I saw this side shot anyway of the barge board area. Way too simple. That is going to change massively before testing. And this is why I keep throwing that caveat out there this week. Even though I'm trying my best to pick certain things out, it's entirely pointless on renders. But keep an eye out on social media tomorrow because the car is going for a shakedown, so we might get some proper real photos of it on track. In terms of the front wing, I think that's very close to the spec they were using towards the end of last season, so I expect that to change come Barcelona. But to be honest, that's pretty much all I'm going to point out on the Alpha Tauri. I'm sure there's so much more, but like I say, the renders are kind of pointless. And this was always going to be more of a livery reaction than anything else. And once again, it's an absolute stunner in my opinion. I bloody love it. Let's move on then. Another busy old day today. Earlier this morning, Mercedes released the W11 or renders of the W11. Of course, on Monday, we got to see their livery for 2020, and now we've seen their launch spec car proper. Like I say, the renders were released and the car was sent for a run around Silverstone, or a shakedown around Silverstone. And the first thing I've got to say on this one is the red, or the burgundy, or the cherry, or the pepper red, depending on your Dulux colour chart. It looks so much better on the car when it's out on track. On Monday, it looked out of place. Something wasn't right with it for me. And now we've seen it in some proper half-decent lighting, it definitely looks better. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not going to go mad with the technical stuff again today, but I am going to look at some areas of interest. First of all, looking at the side of the car, there's no doubt whatsoever that those side pods are definitely slimmer. They drop away, if you like, in a similar fashion to how they did last year, but they are definitely more dramatic, and that car is very tightly packaged. You can see here I've popped some lines on. They're not perfect, but they kind of highlight what I'm trying to say. You can really see that difference in the drop away at the side pod. And I'm not 100% sure on this, but if you look where I've put that red line, it definitely appears to be tighter at the rear. It could just be the lighting, but I don't think it is because of that. I think it is genuinely just very nicely and tightly packaged. And I know this next one is kind of a pointless comparison really, given the development over the course of 2019, but looking at it versus last year's launch spec renders, you can really see the difference in the sculpting of the definition in that side pod. It looks quite a bit more aggressive actually when you look at those two side by side. Kind of sticking with that side pod area, or exactly sticking with that side pod area, you can see the air intake is clearly smaller versus the Brazil spec. Now last year, as I'm sure you'll remember, Mercedes had some real issues with cooling at some of the hotter tracks, and this points to some confidence that maybe they've sorted, or at least think they've sorted, some of those cooling issues. Now, it must be said that when you look at the car on track this morning, the side pod intake is definitely bigger than it looks in the renders, but it's still, for me at least, smaller than last year's. Moving to the front of the car, that front wing in that render looks to have had a few tweaks. Not massive changes, but subtle. However, the on-track pictures appear to show the car running last year's front wing, or a spec that is very close to last year's end-of-season spec. So I'm fully expecting that to change before Barcelona. Also, just another area to point out is the roll hoop or the airbox. Kind of relieved to hear that other people refer to that as the airbox as well, by the way. Thought it was just me being stuck in the past. No great surprises there, though, I guess. But I'd say that's pretty much the same as last year's, just the one big oval, and that's been split into 3 intakes. At the side of the car, or more specifically the barge board area, you can see there on the side pod part of the barge board, if you like, that is one complete piece now, and it's got that really nice rounded edge to it as well. It just looks more integrated into the car. Last year's, although it absolutely wasn't, did look as though it had just been stuck on, whereas again, this year's looks more like it's part of the car. I'm not entirely sure I know what I mean by that, but I hope somebody does out there. Anyway, the rest of the barge board you can see there, maybe 3 parts of that area. I'm not 100% sure on that though, because the lighting in the picture on the right isn't brilliant for that area, but it's about the best one I could find, or at least that I've got saved anyway. So it looks like there are 3 elements there, or at least 3 slots in those elements, as opposed to the one from last year. Pretty much just minor tweaks, couple of things missing, but this is a massive area for in-season development. So I expect that to change a lot between now and testing, and even more between then and Australia. Just a couple of other things worth mentioning that James Allison, the technical director, has said. He's pointed out that they have stiffened up the front suspension in the upright, wheel bearing and wheel area. There is also an all-new rear suspension layout. And he also added that there will be no major changes between testing and Australia. Now, in my notes here, I've written in brackets, that's a claim. In pre-season, as you all well know by now, we've got to take everything Mercedes say with a massive pinch of salt. So they're saying there'll be no changes between testing in Australia, or no major changes. There will be some development, of course. In fact, I'll read you part of James's quote. We will still have upgrades for Melbourne that will come in the second week of testing, but the entire new car approach of 2019 won't feature. So I guess just to round off really on the W11, kind of like I've said about a number of other cars this week, it's just a good evolution of last year's car. There are changes there, but nothing massively dramatic. It's not a revolution, but we're not to expect that. However, after seeing the Ferrari and the Red Bull and reading up on all of their changes earlier this week, I did expect a little bit more from Mercedes. But you know, having said that, they don't really need to go radical or make any big changes because they are the champions, they are the benchmark. And they had a great foundation at the end of last year to build off, or at the end of the last 6 years really, isn't it? They've got a fantastic group of people there. They know what they're doing, so it just makes total sense regardless of 2021 to just tweak things and make the car a little bit better. It's up to Ferrari and Red Bull to close the gap. They're the ones that have really got to go for it. And I'll reiterate this point as well. They are just launch spec renders. There will 100% be changes before testing. They've already said there'll be a new aero package for the second week of testing, but I'm fully expecting a lot more changes for Australia than they're making out at the moment. I guess it all comes down to how testing goes for them though, doesn't it? And finally, for this video and for this week, we've had a little bit of a look at the new Alfa Romeo. I'm not going to do any techie stuff on this one, not even going to try and play spot the difference, because we've not seen a huge amount of pictures. There are some interesting points to pick out there, like the front wing, or the front nose rather, for example. but I'd much rather wait until we see the full launch, which is next Wednesday, and we will cover that in the morning of the first testing stream. But I still wanted to show these pictures off because some of you will want to go and pick them apart and have a look for some of the changes. But also, from a purely aesthetic point of view, that livery is gorgeous. I love it. I know it's split a few people on social media, but I am a big fan of it. And for a second year in a row, it's got that Valentine's Day twist on it too. This is just a launch livery, or probably more specifically, a shakedown livery, and it will 100% change before testing. Oh, and by the way, as I'm sure you can tell by the helmet in the pictures, it was Kimi Räikkönen who took it for a spin this morning. It looks very, very nice. And I do like the black overalls as well that Kimi's wearing. But again, I'm not going to get too excited about this. There's not really an awful lot to say on it because it is just a launch livery or a shakedown livery. But like I say, we'll go over the car in a bit more detail on Wednesday morning when we are live. More on that in a second though. But that is it for this video and for this week. What a week it's been. Thank you so much for all your support on the channel. It's been fantastic. And although these are only launch spec renders and all of that business, it is so good to have something to talk about when it comes to Formula 1. Not long now until testing. I cannot wait. And we're not even that far away from Australia. Bring it on. Now, I will be back on Monday with a video to cover the Racing Point launch and the Williams livery launch, but that will be the only video next week. Because from Wednesday morning, 8:30 AM, I will be live for all of the first week of the pre-season test in Barcelona, and as was the case last year, I will have guests with me for each of the stints. Again, as was the case last year, I'm going to be live from 8:30 in the morning until the lunch break at 12 midday. That is, of course, UK time. And then I'll be live again from 1:30 PM until just after 5 PM. That is for all 3 days of the first test and all 3 days of the second test. And I am going to be letting you know over on social media what the testing lineup is for this year, who's going to be joining me on each of those sessions. So if you are interested in that, make sure you are following me over on social media, and all of the links you need are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.